The one skill at the core of marble racing is, of course, speed, and there's no greater test of speed than hurdles. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Quack, and today we have, as mentioned, hurdles, similar to sprint from last season, but a bit different. As we saw in the qualifiers, it's got bumps on the track, which makes it a bit more technical and a bit more chaotic than it was last season. So there's a lot of strategy involved in finding the right line and navigating around the other marbles. Sometimes all it takes is getting a good start, but of course it's never that simple. You still have to be able to block well and defend well with this very narrow track. You can see the description here, a traditional heats of 4 event, similar to what we saw in Sand Moguls, but of course this is a much more pure test of speed, as the Malamex are demonstrating here. That one marble on the near lane almost got the win, but they fell back toward the midpoint of the track. And we're seeing how it can be a really dynamic race. It's not as simple as starting well. They moved to the center, and that one marble came around on the near side to end up taking the victory from them. So it can be a very dynamic race, and we can see very close finishes, as we saw there, between the third and fourth. So really anything can happen throughout this course. It can change very quickly as we begin with Heat 1 with Spider, the reserve of the King Crabs, Thruster, captain of the Red Rockets, as well as Nectar from the Pollen Puffs, and Knight from the Checkmates. 2 of these marbles medaled last season, Spider and Thruster, so Spider's off to the lead, though, and Nectar's very close. It's going to be close at the end. I think Nectar got the win at the end, but that's a bit surprising that Thruster didn't advance. They got bronze in the sprint last season, a very similar event. Perhaps this very bumpy, grueling track is a little more challenging for them, but they will not be moving on. But Spider will, gold medalists in sprint last season, and they came just shy of Nectar there from the Pollen Puffs. It was actually pretty much 2 photo finishes back-to-back with the marbles going 2 by 2, but the King Crabs will be moving on. And actually, that's a new record for Nectar. The Pollen Puffs getting the record for hurdles. I believe they already have the record for sprint, so very impressive for that marble. But now for the City Lights, Rose Rollers, Team Pixie, and Snapping Turtles. Let's see what these teams can do. The Snapping Turtles look like they have a bit of a lead, but Flora of the City Lights will be taking the win there. That was pretty impressive, a bit of a comeback there. But those two were the top 2 throughout most of it. It looked like the Rose Rollers had it for a moment, but they just slowed to a crawl, and some big bumps there kept Team Pixie well out of the picture for most of that race. But pretty impressive by Toby of the Snapping Turtles to just hang on to second, and Floro of the City Lights, they will take the win here. Not quite taking the record, but still a very impressive time there. They will be moving on once again, a very solid performance, hopefully, for this new team. But now the Stone Golems, Slush Rush, Ivy League, and Stingrays. Needlepoint of the Ivy League, silver medalist in sprint last season. Let's see what they can do here. And right now it's them and the Stone Golems, so they're making a lot of contact. And Manta of the Stingrays will be taking the advancing spot. It looked like Needlepoint had it, but they will not be moving on as the second medalist from sprint that's not going to the semifinals. A bit surprising, but one thing that isn't surprising is Android winning the heat, moving on. They've been one of the strongest athletes in QMC so far in their careers, and they've been doing very strong here. They got a pretty comfortable victory over Manta of the Stingrays, and Sleet of the Slush Rush surprisingly actually took that 3rd place spot, but the home fans very pleased with this. They weren't very strong in the first 2 events, but they're getting at least top half here. But now let's see what the Pegasus of the Soaring Skies, as well as Blink, Saturni, and Bun, several very strong athletes here. Let's see what they can do. Right now this is the Flying Saucers with a bit of a lead in the Flashbangs. Will be taking 2nd place. Not really any contest there. It's just those 2. And you can see Bun of the Loaves of Bread, the captain, a bit surprising they weren't making it, but they got off to a very poor start at the beginning of the race, and that really did them in for the rest of it. They didn't really have any opportunities to catch back up, nor did the Soaring Skies, so neither of the 2 captains actually moving on here. A bit surprising, but the former record holders, Saturnia of the Flying Saucers, will be moving on. But now we look at the bottom half. Unsurprisingly, Thruster getting the best of the rest, and unfortunate for Team Pixie, dead last after getting a medal in the last event. Unfortunate for them, but now we move on to the semifinals, where we begin with the Flashbangs, Stone Golems, Pollen Puffs, and Snapping Turtles. The Stone Golems with their Android, as well as several other very strong athletes here that have proven themselves, and we're off. The Flashbangs have a bit of a lead over the Snapping Turtles, but here comes Android. It looks like they might have taken that 2nd place spot. It was very close to the line. I don't think Nectar ever really came into it, but Blink of the Flashbangs just barely held the lead. And look at that, Toby of the Snapping Turtles just choking it away at the very end. It all went wrong at the very end, and look at that. Android of the of the Stone Golems showing their prowess. They will be moving on by 0.02 of a second. Very shocking victory there. I imagine the home fans are going to be very happy about that one. But now Spider, the reserve of the King Crabs, as well as Saturnia of the Flying Saucers, Manta of the Stingrays, and Floro of the City Lights. Let's see what these teams can do. And they're off. Manta has a bit of a lead, but Spider's close. They're not going to catch up, though. It will be the 2 aquatic animal teams moving on to the final, where the King Crabs challenging for another medal in a speed event like this. And the Flying Saucers and City Lights, the 2 new teams this season, they did not make it to the 2nd round, or to the 3rd round, I should say. but they still will get respectable finishes, I have to imagine, depending on how the times shake out. But we've seen Manta of the Stingrays being very strong here, even beating the former gold medalists, and actually they're going to get the record here by a 100th of a second over Nectar, but now we see the 5th place for the Flying Saucers, 6th for the Snapping Turtles, and unfortunately only 8th for the Pollen Puffs, but we'll see now as the Stingrays, King Crabs, Flashbangs, and the Stone Golems are going to be fighting for the gold here. The Stone Golems fighting for their first medal in their home stadium, but of course the other three trying to play spoiler in that, and they're off. Spider has a bit of a lead over Android and Manta, but here comes Blink. They'll be taking the bronze medal, but the King Crabs with Spider getting their first gold medal of the season. Surprisingly, their first medal in a very long time, since event 6 of the season 1. They will be standing on top of the podium once again, with Spider becoming the first 2-time gold medalist of any athlete in QMC. Very impressive by them. And Manta of the Stingrays picking up the silver. Blink of the Flashbangs picking up that team's first ever medal in the main league. And the King Crabs fans very happy about that one. That is showing why they are the reigning champions. And disappointing for the Stone Golems. Couldn't quite nab a medal, but Spider will be standing atop the podium as they have before in sprint and now in hurdles, showing that they're one of the fastest marbles in this league. The rest of the coaches standing beneath them have to be pleased with that performance, but you can see the record highlighting green. Manta will be holding on to that for presumably the rest of the season, depending on how the B-League goes, but Spider of the King Crabs very consistent, below 3.2 for all 3 of their times, so very impressive, well-earned gold medal. But the Stingrays are the ones who actually move into the point lead, despite not having a gold medal yet, but only by a single point over the Loaves of Bread and City Lights, who are tied for 2nd place, so a lot of things can still change as we head into the 4th event, which will be bowling. But before that, we head back to the B-League for hurdles, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching.